Everybody, it's Dawn here and welcome to my channel. Now, if you're new here, I hope that you enjoy my videos, and if you do, don't forget to like and subscribe, because together we'll get to build this community. Now, in today's video, I want to talk about how we receive psychic information. Now, I found from my many years of teaching and mentoring people to develop their psychic and their mediumship abilities, knowing and understanding how information comes to us is really an essential part of the development. It's kind of a foundation. So settle in and sit back, and I hope you enjoy. So I'd like to introduce you to the Clairs. Now, I joke around in my face-to-face classes about the fact that the Clairs, well, they're not a group of women with the same name. I even put a cute picture of a group of old ladies laughing on a park bench to illustrate the point and to bring a little bit of lightheartedness in. Now, I'm sure that you know all about the Clairs, what they are and how they work, but if you don't, here's a crash course to help you. Now, before I dive in, I do want to talk about labelling. Now, I remember during a psychic development class that I was running a number of years ago, and we were talking about the Clairs, the ways in which information was already coming to those people in the room. When one of the group raised an issue that she was having with me labelling it or trying to put a name on it, like clairsentience or clairvoyance. And really, she didn't want to be labelled, and I totally get where she was coming from. And I found it hard when I was coming out as a medium to find words to express what I was. I remember toying with being an intuitive instead of owning the fact that I was a medium. I was a bridge between the spirit and the physical worlds. Now, clairvoyance is the predominant way that the information comes to me. So now I talk about myself in terms of being a clairvoyant medium. But there's so much more about what I do than that. So to honour her and everybody else that doesn't want to be labelled, please listen to this whilst holding in your mind my sincere intention of not trying to label anyone. I offer this information to you as a way of finding a vocabulary to explain what's taking place in your process, and not to label you in any way, shape or form. You are unique, just as your abilities are, and I hope that you'll find ways of expressing these in a way that feels right for you. Now, before we explore the Clairs, I want to talk about how I interpret some of the other labels that people use and what I believe that they are. So let's start with medium. Well, for me, a medium is somebody who's a bridge between the physical world, so our world, and the non-physical world where spirit reside. And mediums are people who perceive the higher vibration of spirit, and they communicate with them in a way that provides accurate and evidential information. Now, an intuitive is somebody who has tuned in their natural psychic senses to be able to perceive psychic information, or in other words, information that we pick up using our six senses. It's not normally evident in our conscious mind, but intuitives are able to tap in. And psychics, well, they're the same as an intuitive. Now, one thing I want to clarify, that in order to be a medium, you do need to be psychic, but not every psychic or intuitive is a medium. So what is your sixth sense? Well, we have a normal set of five senses, so touch, taste, smell, hearing and seeing. And we have what is known as our sixth sense, this mysterious supernatural ability. And we often hear it described as a gift. So let me disavow you of this myth. We all have a sixth sense. And some people are aware of it and listen to its guidance, and some don't. But everyone has it. It's an innate part of us. And if we pay attention to it, it will help us to be guided in the right way. So a sixth sense is our ability to perceive things that are much subtler than those of the physical world. It's a way of picking up information that's not recognised by our normal five senses. However, we receive this information in much the same way. So we feel it, we see it, we hear it, just as well as know it or even smell it. And I like to think that this is an extension of my 5 regular senses. And when I engage them fully, I'm not missing out on any of the information that is available to me and I have access to. It's also important to remember that using your sixth sense is not about communicating necessarily with spirit. It could be, but not necessarily. We'll often be accessing our sixth sense information about the people and the places around us that has nothing to do with a connection to a spirit. In fact, it's probably the least way that we'll be using our sixth sense information. Now, I'm going to describe the ways in which psychic information can come to us, and I'll share with you some of the stories about how spirit or the energy of the place has communicated with me. But remember, in order to move into mediumship or to hone your psychic abilities, you need to practice. Now, sometimes the sixth sense is called gut instinct or even spidey senses, and it's the same thing, whatever you call it. And like any muscle, it'll grow if you use it. The more you tune into that part of you and use the information to guide you, the stronger it becomes and the more that you rely on it. So let's look at the different ways that this information can come. Now remember, you will have a predominant way that you rely on the most, but you'll also be receiving information in the other ways as well, just maybe not as clear. So let's start with clairsentience. Now, the translation to that is clear feeling, and it really is just that. It's how we pick up information from our surroundings, from other people, whether they're physical or non-physical. We pick up information about situations, etc. And I chose to start with this one because it's the one that is most commonly used by people, whether they're aware of it or not, whether they're into metaphysical stuff or whether they're just normal people. Now, if you've heard people talk about the gut feeling or the gut instinct, or that just something didn't feel right, these are normal, rational people who use this type of language, but would run screaming from the room if you mentioned anything remotely to do with energy, intuition, or even spirits. Way too woo-woo or new age, or just plain crazy for them. The funny thing is that they are using their clairsentience. They're using their ability to perceive energy and information about something and translate it into feelings in order to make sense of it. And basically that's what clairsentience is really. It's about having a feeling about something or someone or someplace. Now, on my journey with spirit, I have learned a lot about clairsentience. And I found that actually it is quite a major player in how I translate information. So through my experiences, I now know that because I feel so much, I really had to put a barrier around me to protect me from it. No, and I think I did this intuitively as a little girl to protect myself. And through the process of my development and opening myself up to spirit, I really let go of this and found ways to manage my energy and my ability to feel so that I could have a normal life, but also explore my mediumship and my psychic abilities through clairsentient. And one of the first exercises that I did at the Open Circle in the Spiritualist Church was one of psychometry. I think it might have been the second meeting or so that I had attended, and we were asked to pair up and to read an object that was given to us by our partner. Now, I didn't have a clue what was going on, and I was terrified of not getting something, being seen to be, poor at it. Particularly after my partner, when she took my wedding ring, succeeded in providing some really specific information about me and my life. So when it was my turn, I took the necklace, I think it was, that was offered. I'm not sure if I was shaking on the outside, but I was definitely shaking on the inside. I was terrified. I didn't want to sit there and look dumb. So I held the object in my hands and I closed my eyes, like I'd seen her do, and I waited. And I waited and I waited and nothing. I opened my eyes and my partner was smiling encouragingly, and she recommended that I breathed. I hadn't realised that in my fear state, I was actually holding my breath and blocking any flow of information. She reassured me that this was just practice, so I tried again. And this time, I started to get images appear in my mind. A vase of flowers, a window with sunlight streaming through, and a book. I conveyed these to my partner, and she confirmed that she had actually been sitting in her reading spot with just a book before she left for the circle. My description of the flowers and the window were accurate, so hurrah, success. I'd actually got something. I'd read my first object and I was elated. I was energized and I was amazed and probably a little bit freaked out. Now, it seems that I had a bit of a talent for psychometry, and I've used this technique many, many times and with some very unusual objects. Now, I do have a video on the practice of psychometry on my channel, which I will link in the description below. So you might be interested in checking that out if you want to practice this technique to help you to develop. So back to my experiences. One time I was on a paranormal investigation in the UK at a place called Ordsall Hall. It is a beautiful old manor in Manchester, England, which dates back over 750 years. It is very active, and it also has ghost cams with live, like kind of 24/7 feed. Now, I was in a part of the house that was set up like a study with a writing desk and a chair at one end. To the left was an enormous brick-built fireplace with a wooden mantel. Now, one of my fellow investigators and a mentor challenged me to put my hands onto the fireplace to see what I could pick up about the room. Now, I'd never done anything like this before, so I was game to try anything. I was buoyant and high, so I placed both of my hands on the mantel. I didn't even have time to close my eyes to tune in, but I was immediately transported to a time in history, and I could see this with my eyes open. I was standing in a room with soldiers coming in and out from the room. It was all kind of hustle and bustle. And there was an important looking man who was sitting at a desk. It wasn't the same desk, but was sitting at a desk towards the top of a room. It was in a different location. It didn't look the same, but the fireplace did. So I assumed that it was the same room. Now, the men's uniforms were red with a metal breastplate, and they had a helmet. Now, when I took my hands off the mantel, the room returned back to normal, and I was able to describe what I'd seen. Now, I'm not a history buff, nor did I know anything about Ordsall Hall at the time, but apparently one of its owners, a Sir Alexander Radcliffe, was a royalist in the English Civil War. This was in 1642 to 1651, and the royalist soldiers did indeed wear uniforms like I'd seen and described. Now, I was totally blown away by that experience, and really it helped my confidence grow because what I'd seen was accurate and could be validated. Now, one thing to bear in mind that there weren't ghosts in the room. I was reading the energy of events that had been left in the fabric of the building. It was just like a movie that I was watching. It was playing itself out. It was pretty neat. Another odd thing that I have psychometrized is human hair. In fact, I've done this a couple of times now, not knowing what was in the envelopes or in my hands at the time. And once with full knowledge of what I was holding. Now, both times I was able to connect with a spirit of the person who was the owner of the hair. And I was able to provide some very lovely information and validation to their loved ones. And, you know, hair really is a great holder of our spiritual energy. And it's this, I think, that allowed me to create a wonderful bridge by holding it. It's totally fascinating to me because back in the day, in Victorian times, the bereaved used to make jewellery using the hair of their loved ones. So perhaps they also knew that it enabled them to stay connected and close to that person. Now, psychometry is a great way to practice your clairsentience, as you're employing your ability to feel through the medium of touch to receive psychic information. Now, it's important to stress that not all the information that you get from psychometry is from spirit. In fact, it usually is just psychic information that you'll be picking up. Now, the theory behind psychometry is that some objects do hold energetic memories of their history and from the experience of the people that owned the object or interacted it in some ways. Their emotions, even their personalities, get energetically absorbed into the very object, just waiting for somebody to tune in. Now, in my face-to-face workshops, I've always had my students practicing psychometry, as it's a really great way to build up your sensitivity to energy and how to read it. Now, another surprising thing about clairsentience is that it's not just about emotions. It can extend to the ability to pick up the physical conditions of somebody living or in spirit. Now, I encountered this for the first time on a paranormal investigation at a place called Plas Teg. Plas Teg is a wonderful Jacobean mansion in the North Wales, again in the UK. And I was there for the first time and didn't know anything of the history of the building. So walking into a bedroom on the ground floor with a big 4-poster bed kind of in the centre and a dresser and other items of furniture that really related it to it being a bedroom. So I settled down to tune in, and there was no doubt it had a weird vibe and it felt sad, but I really wasn't prepared for what happened next. I started to choke. It was like a rope had been placed around my neck and it was tightening, and I was literally choking, retching and coughing. And this was to the point that I thought I was going to be sick or pass out. So I did leave the room and I sat down on the stairs to recover. So when I'd stopped coughing, I realised that I had been joined by a young lady in spirit. Now, she showed me that she had indeed been hung, and that she was stuck in kind of a looping of the last moments of her life. And it was very sad indeed, and at that time I had no clue how to help her. I hadn't learned spirit rescue. So she left my space and I reflected on what had just happened. Now, I found the caretaker of the property and I told him just what had occurred for me, and he told me that the room that I was in never had been a bedroom, but it had actually been staged to look like one. Now, it was in fact the room that was used as the courtroom and a place of execution when the visiting judge came to the area. This was a guy called Judge Jeffreys. He was an infamous judge who was well known as the Hanging Judge Jeffreys. And he meted out many hangings in that room. And in fact, the trapdoor was beneath the 4-poster bed itself. And my spirit visitor, well, she'd indeed lost her life in that very room. Now, that wasn't the only physical experience that I had that evening. A more humorous one was I was in an actual bedroom. It was a bedroom upstairs, and I felt myself very heavily pregnant. I was walking around with a hand in the small of my back and, my belly thrust out, and I was kind of rubbing it with my other hand, and it really felt that I was pregnant and in labour with full-blown pains. Now, I did think I was going to have to go and lie down in the car because the pain was so bad. And it must have been pretty comical to everybody watching me pace around the room and panting. But I settled down in a chair, and after a little while, I was shown another young woman. Now, she was lying in the bed that was in the room, and she was in labour, and there was something seriously going wrong with the pregnancy. She was struggling to give birth, and sadly for her and the child, they both didn't survive, and they died in that bed. And as soon as I got that and understood the message, the pain stopped. And that was a big lesson to me about how psychic information comes to us. It was a lively night and it was much learning. And it really took me some time to really, kind of understand what was going on. Why was spirit wanting to hurt me in this way? Now, I had a great mentor and friend who was able to talk to me about it, and she helped me to really understand that I was just receiving information and interpreting it in a clairsentient way. So the spirits were not going out of the way to hurt me. I just had the ability to receive the information and to feel it viscerally in my body. Now, at the time, it was something I wasn't too thrilled about, but I've come to rely on it quite a lot. And I've also learned how to manage the communication in a way that's better for me. So when I receive something in my body physically, and I know what's being communicated with to me, and I know it's not my pain, I ask them to take the feeling off me. And for the most part, they do. And the pain or the experience stops. Now, in the rare occasion, it doesn't stop. So I remove myself from the location and I take myself out of the very energy that I'm in. And it works like a charm. So if you're somebody who experiences information kind of physically in this way, embrace it. But learn how to manage it so it doesn't become distressing and it doesn't become a burden for you. You might find talking to a friend, you start to get a sore shoulder, only to find out that he or she has been suffering from one. You might pick up on people's emotional state as well. And this is great information, but you need to determine what is your stuff and what is somebody else's. Now, since that first experience, I've been hung quite a few times. I've been stabbed, strangled, I've suffered a stroke, I've had heart attacks, you name it. But it's just information. It's not mine to keep. And if you're clairsentient, you'll want to remember that. Now, I have a video on psychic protection for empaths. So if this is you, you might be interested in checking it out. There are a number of techniques in there to help you to kind of manage your boundary if you're somebody who's barraged by the energy of others. And I will link that in the description below. So let's look at clairvoyance. Now, I find that this is the one ability that everybody wants to have. I can't tell you how many times that people have said to me things like, oh, I only hear spirit, but I wish I could see them. Or I get feeling about things all the time, which are incredibly accurate, but I wish I could see spirit like you do. It seems that there's a hierarchy to how we experience spirit, and clairvoyance appears to be at the top of the list. Now, why is that? Well, I think that it has something to do with the fact that as human beings, we're really oriented to what we see. So it's like, unless we see something, it doesn't exist or it mustn't be true. And we all know that even what we see sometimes isn't the truth anyway. But we still hold this way of experiencing spirits as the one that we want. It's kind of the Valhalla. Now, clairvoyance exactly is the ability to see clearly. And for the most part, I see spirit in my mind. Sometimes still pictures, sometimes fast moving still pictures, kind of quickened up, like an old movie kind of flickering. Sometimes the moving images are like a modern day movie. And there doesn't appear to be a reason why I see them in these different ways. Perhaps it's the quality of the connection or something, I'm not sure. Now, one of the difficult things that I've had to work through is how to distinguish between my imagination and what is kind of spirit communication, or what I'm seeing, is it spirit or just something from my imagination. And many mediums that I've coached and trained have the same issues. And all I can say is that distinguish between the two, there's really no quick fix. It's really one of time and experience, really. If you think you have a connection to spirit and that's what you're seeing, ask for more information and pay attention to how you feel as it's being received. Allow yourself to interpret it through a variety of ways. Now, when I first started to see spirit, my eyes had to be closed. This isn't the case now, as I can see spirit in my mind's eye whilst my physical eyes are open. And I might be doing something else like talking to somebody or watching the TV or even writing a book. As I look back into my past, I think I was seeing spirit in this way long before I had my spiritual awakening. I do remember experiencing similar images and moving pictures, but I didn't know what I was seeing. I really had never entertained the possibility of it might be me communicating with spirit, but it'd always been there for me. Now, years ago, I was relaxing on a beach with my husband. It was a hot day and I closed my eyes and immediately I saw the image of a Oriental man, Chinese or Japanese, who was stripped to the waist, and he was kneeling with his arms outstretched and tied kind of to a pole, and he was being beaten and he was kind of grimy and sweaty. It was so vivid and it really shocked me, so I kind of shut up and opened my eyes with a start. Now then I closed them again and he was gone. Whatever I tapped into was fleeting. And I remember turning to my husband and I asked him if when he closed his eyes, he ever saw anything, kind of like a movie or a picture. And he replied, just the back of my eyelids. So I described what I saw and asked him again if he ever saw images like this, and he'd never had. And at that moment, I realized that not everybody did. I think it was a defining moment in me trusting that what I was actually seeing was spirit. So now I don't doubt what I see. I know that I'm glimpsing an image of a person who's no longer physically here, or the energy vibration of a person who is, but is linked to me in some way, and their energy connection is flowing to me and manifesting in kind of visual form. Another thing that I get to see is the manifestation of the energy of a place or of nature. So fairies, gnomes and elves and trolls. Now they exist in different dimension or vibration, and when we attune to that, we get a peek into their world. Again, I have a couple of videos that you might be interested in checking out. One on fairies and one called Spirit of Place, and I will link them below. And then there's otherworldly visitors. There are times when I see alien faces and alien beings, and I know that I'm having a connection to another world. So clairaudience is the next, and this is about clear hearing. So hearing names, dates, sayings, songs, melodies. Now most likely you'll hear this in your own head, and the reason for this is that spirit communicates telepathically, but it can be hard to determine if these are your own your own voice, your inner voice, or psychic senses, or is it higher self, or is it spirit? It can be confusing for many of us. Now the words that we receive from spirit do sound like our own voice most of the time. It's like when you're reading silently in your head to yourself. However, sometimes they will get, somebody will get something very distinct from their own voice. It will sound very, very different. Now some people will hear objectively, so that's outside of themselves. So have you ever heard your name called out, but there's nobody there? It may have been, from a loved one in spirit trying to say hi, or it can be spirit guides, or actually kind of, warnings from your higher self. Now, one example of this is when I was driving alone. I was on a motorway in the UK in the north of England, and it's a pretty fast motorway. I mean, motorways are fast in the UK. I was going about 80 miles, so what's that? Maybe about 120 clicks. I was listening to music, kind of enjoying the drive, bobbing along. Suddenly I heard a voice, and it was inside the car. It was audible and it was shouting, slow down. And really, it kind of gave me a start, and I panicked and I took my foot off the accelerator immediately, and the car did start to slow down. And with a blink of an eye, a car which had been travelling in the fast lane to my right, because we drive on the other side, it took an exit right at the last minute and cut across me. And if I'd been going just a little bit faster, the car would have clipped me for sure. I was so grateful to my spirit team, whoever that was, for keeping me safe, even if my heart was racing. Another example of me hearing spirit audibly was a little less frightening, but it was very, very interesting. I was traveling in a car with my soul sister Matilda, and we were coming back from an investigation that we'd been asked to do in an abandoned building. It was quite late at night and it was dark, and there was no other traffic on the road at all at that time. We were just kind of chatting away when we heard like the air horns of what seemed to be like a really large semi-truck. We kind of looked around for the headlights of the truck, which we really felt must have been very, very close and about to hit us, but we couldn't see anything. Matilda was shouting, asking, kind of where the truck was and if it was going to hit us, but there was nothing around, no truck at all. But we both heard the horns quite clearly. Now, after we got over our shock, we were laughing about it, about what happened, and we kind of pulled up to a set of red lights. Again, there was nobody around us when we heard, pardon my French, "fuck you," and it was shouted very, very clearly into the open window on the passenger side. We both looked at each other and we laughed so hard as we couldn't see who was shouting this kind of expletive at us. Everywhere was deserted. We heard it again, clear and as loud as before. It really looked like that we'd picked up a spirit hitchhiker from the air horn incident. Perhaps he'd lost his life at the spot that we drove past. We weren't sure who he was, as he wouldn't talk to us. Now, he did play a few tricks until we asked him to leave. Now, despite a few experiences like the ones that I've just talked about, clairaudience really is my least developed ability, so I don't have a lot to say about this one from my own experiences. So if you hear spirit, I'd love you to share how it works for you in the comments below so that we can all learn. Now, there are a couple more ways in which we receive psychic and spirit information. One is through taste and the other smell. For me, I often get smells which are indications that I have kind of a spirit around me, or I'm picking up on something in the room. Most people smell cigarette or cigar smoke, perfume, or sometimes stale sweat. And taste is an interesting one, as sometimes we'll get something strange tasting in our mouths, and this doesn't happen to me a lot. It's happened a couple of times, and usually it's I kind of taste blood. The first time it happened to me, it was information from a spirit, and he'd actually had his throat cut in a location, and I was really quite thankful that I received the information in this way and not through me feeling how he sadly had passed away. So there are the big ways in which we get information. Of course, they're my interpretation. It could look and be different for you. But I hope that the information and my experiences have helped you to understand a little better about what might be going on for you. Please do leave your comments below, hit the like button and subscribe. And if you think this is a video that can help a friend, please feel free to share it with them. Ta-ta for now.